All right, you there, Paul?
Yes, sir.
All right, everybody, we're live. Week 2 of college football. Like we've said on previous episodes, it feels like you wait forever for um, football to start, and then it comes and it's gone it feels like a flash of an eye. But for the people who are watching this that doesn't know the other party in this episode, his name is Paul. And how do you pronounce your last name, Paul?
Regalia.
Regalia. Yeah. So backstory, I met Paul at a buddy of mine's wedding, or a mutual friend's wedding last year. So he's wanted to come on the show, talk some ball. I'm hoping Steven's going to be able to join us here shortly. Kind of the rundown of this episode tonight. Paul is a Florida fan, so we're going to let him vent a little bit about that thrashing they took from the Miami Hurricanes last Saturday. We're going to talk Carolina Clemson football like we always do. We're going to preview some other college football games this week. The slate's not as good as it was last week, but still some big games this week. We're going to talk Tennessee, NC State, Colorado, Nebraska, Michigan, Texas, obviously Clemson, App State, South Carolina, Kentucky. We'll let Paul talk about the Florida versus Sanford game coming up this weekend. Then we're also going to get into, because by our name is Two Guys Talking Sports. So we're going to talk more than college football tonight. We're going to talk some F1 because that's a sport me and Paul share together. He kind of got me into this to the sport. And then unfortunately we're going to talk some Premier League. So if we got any soccer fans that follow this channel, we're going to talk about it a little bit heading into the international break. But Paul, the floor is yours. I thought it was bad for Carolina and Clemson fans last weekend, but Florida, it's a nice little wake up call for y'all last weekend.
Yeah, you were just kind of alluding to, football season coming and going. I think both of us can agree after the first week that we're kind of hoping it goes a little bit quicker than usual because it's not looking good for both of our teams this year. But I mean, you know me, I talk to you all the time about the Gators. It's going to be a tough one, man. I was not a believer of Billy Napier off the jump. Obviously,
Yeah.
Sunbelt Billy. I tell you all the time, right? It's like if you can give me Dan Mullen's coaching ability and Billy Napier's recruiting, and you can mesh them together,
Yeah.
you have a phenomenal coach because Billy's Napier's game management going forward on 4th and 5 at like the 50, like Cam Ward was destroying us all game with our legs. Our defense isn't going to be what it's used to being, but I think Miami is a lot better than what people probably had going into it. I think they're going to be a dark horse for the ACC or one of the favorites for the ACC, especially with Cam Ward at the helm.
Yeah.
But this Gators team may win 4 games all year, my man.
It
It's going
sounds
to
like
be brutal.
Sounds like the Gamecocks.
Yeah. I'm pumped that it's Sanford this week because I can go into it feeling good. The one good thing about this game coming up this week would probably be that I'm not a firm believer of Graham Mertz. I don't think he's bad by any means. But we did get a 5-star recruit who was Gatorade Player of the Year. I don't know if you saw DJ Lagway.
Yeah, I saw he was named the starter today.
He's going to start this week with Graham Mertz having a concussion, which I'm super pumped to see. It's going to be really raw, but just the attributes this kid has. He runs the ball insanely well. He's got a strong arm. It's just probably reading the defenses and able to break down the game mentally. That'll be his toughest problem this week.
Yeah, and that's what you saw with Lenore Sellers from South Carolina last week against Old Dominion. They have all that hype, but it's just until you get in the game, you actually need game experience to be able to process everything, or just from like an analytical standpoint where they're not checking out and just running and taking off and waiting for stuff to open up. And with Napier, I think it's only a matter of time before he gets fired at Florida. I don't think he's ever really been successful at the major D1 level because, he was the offensive coordinator at Clemson, and then he got fired or they just mutually parted ways. And, he had a successful run at UL Lafayette, but it just seems to appear. And, Florida's a tough job anyways. It's ever since, it's tough. You went Urban Meyer, then who was it? Muschamp or or Ron. Yeah, Ron Zook was after Spurrier.
Urban Meyer, Muschamp, and then it was
Mullen.
no, it was Jim
Oh, Jim
McElwain.
McElwain. Yeah,
Yep, Jim McElwain,
the
who
Central
wasn't
Michigan
wasn't
coach.
wasn't terrible, but just one good season fell off. My thing would be is Dan Mullen kind of shot himself in the foot when you come
Yeah.
out and say you don't
Mhm.
want to recruit, and then you're on your lake house, wake surfing and not recruiting on a weekend where you could be recruiting. That's a bad
Yeah.
look. But
Yeah.
I mean, 2 New Year's Six bowls, 1-1 in those New Year's Six bowls. If I
Yeah.
could tell you South Carolina in the next 2 years is going to go to 2 New Year's Six bowls, you take that every single year, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and honestly, that run we had the 3 consecutive years where I think we either won 10 or 11 games. I mean, honestly, we would have been competing for SEC championships if we just didn't have like one game where we just picked to play the worst game of all time. It was usually against Tennessee, and because we could have been competing for playing in New Year's Six bowls potentially, or whatever it was at the time. So yeah, I think Napier's on borrowed time. Honestly, if the season
I was
continues the way it did last week, Shane Beamer may be on the hot seat as
My
well.
question to you would be is I think personally, I think both of them are probably gone after this year. I just don't see any situation where both coaches come out. I would be surprised if both of us even become bowl eligible. The schedule's a gauntlet with Texas and Oklahoma in it this
Yeah.
year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a big part to becoming a coach in the SEC is the timing you come in and like the roster you kind of
Yeah.
adopt because
Mm-hmm.
they came into a time where, I mean, Georgia was top dog. The West was really, really good, which has always been. But like the East in particular, you look at it, like Kentucky's been very good for years.
Yeah.
Missouri's been on the come up, I would say. So like
Yeah.
even like the traditional teams that usually aren't that good in
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky
Yeah.
and Missouri have been better than us, I would say. So
Yeah.
both of these guys took a job where they weren't, the top of the top at the
Mm-hmm.
current moment. So I would be surprised if either of them, are coaches after this year. But
Mm-hmm.
my next question to you would be if you could hire a dream coach, you can be realistic, kind of. Who
Yeah.
would you like to be the next South Carolina coach?
I don't know. That's a great question. It's just like it's always. I know one thing Gamecock fans have that this has always been their like question. It's like, okay, if we do move on, who are we going to hire? That's what we did in baseball. It's what we did in basketball with Frank Martin. It's what we did with Muschamp. Honestly, I don't know. Like, I don't have a name. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who would say if there's a way we could entice like an Urban Meyer or people were saying Nick Saban, and I don't know, it would have to be because the reality of especially SEC football now is there's no more divisions. So the year South Carolina beat Florida to win the East in 2010, we went 7-5. A 7-5 SEC team is not going to be making the SEC championship anymore. So it's like, and then you look at the top of the SEC, it's Georgia, you got Texas now, Alabama, Missouri, Ole Miss. I mean, you can name 5 or 6 teams that are just light years ahead of us, both South Carolina and Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I mean, I honestly, I don't know who I would hire.
Honestly,
I just don't have a name that I think we could realistically get, because at the end of the day, we don't have the unlimited funds like a Florida does, or like a Texas A&M, where Texas A&M paid Jimbo Fisher, $70+ million not to coach for them. And I mean, South Carolina, if South Carolina were to fire Shane Beamer this year without cause, I think he would be owed. I saw it the other day. It was like either between 12 and $16 million. So it's, so
it's better than us.
Yeah, but y'all also have deeper pockets than South Carolina.
Yeah. I think Billy Napier is like 26 million because he's got 2
Oh
years
God!
left. Yeah,
Look, check this comment out. Go Mets! What is this? Yeah.
Hey, listen. I don't know if we're talking baseball. I'll go into it briefly.
At the end of the show.
What a run the Mets are on right now. That's all I'll say about it. But I will talk about coaching because I know I spoke to you before the Florida State game this week about I said that Bill O'Brien hire for Boston College was going to be a sneaky good hire. And yes, Florida State is terrible. DJ Uiagalelei is awful. Yeah. is not good.
Mm-hmm.
But that Boston College team, the scheme, that offense was way better than I thought. Bill Bryant is going to have that
Yeah.
program being good in the
Yeah.
next few years.
I think what you're seeing with Florida State is it's the downside of the transfer portal, where like if you're so reliant on every piece of your team being from the portal, you're either going to strike gold or you're just going to stink like Florida State's looked the first 2 weeks, where like what I like to see from the portal, at least with what you saw after basically Beamer's first year, is you still have that strong high school recruiting class, but then you can go to the portal and if you're if you need a linebacker or something, or when we got Spencer Rattler, I mean that's the benefit of the portal, compared to like when we played Old Dominion last week, they had 56 new players on their roster. I mean, that's over
absurd.
half from previous season. And I don't think that's what the portal, the portal is what the portal is. Like, we can have so many, I could talk for hours about the NIL era and the transfer portal. And like you said, you're seeing it with Florida State. Last year was their year. I mean, they had Jordan Travis, they had Keon Coleman. I mean, Jaheim Bell, go on and name all these guys they got from the portal, and now they're gone. And, people should not be surprised what they're seeing from DJ, because that's what you saw for the time he was at Clemson. Like, that's it's exactly what he did for Clemson. Like, he's not going to go out and necessarily lose you a game, but he's also not going to win you a game. Like, he's not going to take command, march down the field and score. Yeah. It's just going to be these short intermittent passes. I mean, he missed a touchdown wide open. Like, when I got home from the Mullins Lakeview game Monday night, and I turn it on, it's like right when the guy was wide open, and that's what he did at Clemson his entire career. So I don't think people should be surprised with what they're seeing.
No, and I don't know if they'll make a bowl game. The ACC is a lot better than Boston College, I would say. Like I said, I think Boston College will be better than what people think, but I mean, Louisville, Clemson. UNC's been pretty decent. Clemson,
NC State.
There's some good teams to where they're going to have a tough year.
Yeah. I'm still trying to think of a coach we would hire. And I'll get more into like Beamer's tenure when we talk the Carolina-Kentucky game. Who would you want Florida to go after? Put it back on you.
You brought it up, man. You love or hate the guy. The guy can coach. Give me Urban Meyer back.
Really?
Recruit.
Do you think he would come back?
No. I don't think. I think a big issue is. I don't think him and Spurrier see eye to eye, and Spurrier's pretty involved in the Florida program.
I heard Spurrier's got his hands in that program.
Yeah, so he's pretty involved in it now. I don't know if he was so much with the Billy Napier hire, but after Billy got hired, he came back, and I think he lives in Gainesville and is very involved in the program, shows up to the majority of the games.
Yeah, after he just left South Carolina in shambles several years ago. Don't even get me started on that. I still don't like the way he did that.
I think it was like a undercover hit job where he did it for us.
It's like you're a legendary coach who was well known. He didn't like recruiting, but when you're at the height of your time at South Carolina and you're saying, I think I may have 1 or 2 more years left in me. And then people start leaving, like players start decommitting, and then you just bolt in the middle of the season when it's not going great. And he just left the program in shambles, and it's tough to rebound in the SEC like that, where these other teams and just for the life of me, since we hired Muschamp, we can't find a competent offensive coordinator. So it's like, it is what it is at this point. Like, I've just come, like I said in our previous show, historically we're between a 6 to 8 win consistent team. The 10-11 win seasons we had back at the height of when Connor Shaw was here, I feel like that was an anomaly. It's just, and that's not saying we can't. You're right, Bradley. He did get that membership to Augusta and bolted. But
he's an old man. He likes to play golf. We can't do it.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like when you got top recruits in the country coming in to visit, you don't even know who they are. That's not the best, in my opinion, the best way to try to run a football program. So, but yeah.
Just to go back to coaching, 2 hires that I know Florida couldn't get. You were talking about the transfer portal. Dan Lanning, Lane Kiffin, younger coaches that have been under, like
Mhm.
prodigies of, Nick Saban and guys like that. I think what Lane Kiffin did with the transfer portal, Ole Miss's
Yeah.
offense for the last few years
Mhm.
has been very good. Jackson Dart's a very
Yeah.
good QB. What they do in the portal this year,
Yeah.
their one knock on them would be the lines, the trenches. What he do? He went into the portal, got big boys, said,
Yeah.
"We're going to line up now against Alabama, Georgia, and then
Mhm.
let's see how we do." So
Yeah.
I said I think Ole Miss gets in the playoffs, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them in the SEC championship this year. I think they
Yeah.
could beat a Texas, beat a Georgia this
Mhm.
year. That offense is legit.
I don't think you'll see Dan Lanning leave
No,
Oregon. I
neither of
mean,
them
he
will
has
leave their current jobs.
unlimited NIL funds. I mean,
Yeah.
Phil Knight has said he has an open checkbook for that program because he wants to win a national championship while he's alive.
No, I don't think either of them will leave their current jobs, but, like, I think you need that younger coach who
Yeah.
understands, like, the NIL, the transfer portal, because
Mhm.
some of these old guys, like you said, they just haven't bought into it yet. So, like,
Yeah.
that mind of just, accepting for what it is
Yeah.
and kinda, directing yourself through it.
And I think Beamer's done a good job with the portal. You have to work within the confines of what NIL collective you have, how much money you have to work with. And then honestly, especially with the portal, what players you can realistically get. If we play like we did against Old Dominion every game the rest of the year, there's not many people that are transfer players that are going to want to come here. And we have to worry about keeping the guys we have. I mean, they're already talking about Dylan Stewart entering the transfer portal at the end of the year, and it's just complete BS. It's not like he was this unknown recruit coming out of high school that just showed up out of nowhere. South Carolina battled and got him and got him on campus. So I don't think he won't leave unless Beamer gets fired. But I don't think Beamer gets fired this year, but it also depends how this season goes. Like, even if we do realistically win 4 games, like I said in our preview show, it's how we look in those games. If we do go 4-8, but we lose to Ole Miss by a touchdown, like, on paper, we're not supposed to win that game. So it's like, there's no such thing as a moral victory, but you also can't fault, when we're, we have Kentucky this week, LSU, Akron, bye week, Ole Miss, at Oklahoma, at Alabama, bye, and then we still have Texas A&M, Missouri, Vanderbilt, which Vanderbilt didn't look that bad last week against Virginia Tech, and then Wofford and Clemson. So, it just depends how we look. And if it's something where the offense continues to struggle, does he make any changes? Because the one knock you can say on Beamer is it's like we have to almost hit rock bottom for him to even consider making any changes, and just stuff I'm hearing, like reading message boards and stuff, is the issues we had with Satterfield we're having with Dow Loggins now. And it's just like, if Beamer's willing to hitch his wagon to Dow Loggins as his offensive coordinator and the offense continues to look like that, I mean, I don't have any sympathy for people. I don't care if he gets fired, because it's like, if you have an issue, it's an issue, and you still refuse to address it, I don't know what to tell you. That's
You're
the
a
nature of the
reflection of your
business.
coordinators.
Yeah, and I think Clayton White's he's not the best coordinator, but I think he's a solid defensive coordinator. It sucks it took him 10 weeks last year to fix the defense, but the defense, what we made major upgrades on the defense through the portal, what we had coming back, and the true freshman class. So, outside the 2 plays against Old Dominion, defense looks solid. So we'll see what they look like against Kentucky, because that's a team that normally gives us fits. They do. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
They've been good too. What is it, 3-4 years now? They've been very competitive.
Yeah. I mean, since Stoops has been there, I mean, he's pretty much dominated South Carolina.
I know he's
I don't think Muschamp beat him one time.
Yeah.
And that was the game Deebo Samuel got hurt, because I was at that game. It was people get all excited when we wear the all black uniforms, and we always suck when we wear them. Like, we wore them against Kentucky last year, and thank God, like, Kentucky's quarterback couldn't throw. I mean, he could throw the ball, but God knows you don't know where it was going. So, So last weekend could have gone better for our football team. So,
Hey, you got to win. That's all you can ask for.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're 1-0, so can't complain. Let's kind of get into because we had a game on Sunday and Monday. You had USC LSU on Sunday. Did you get to watch any of that?
I watched the second half of the LSU USC game.
Yeah.
Um,
I thought USC's defense was pretty solid. I don't
I
know
thought
how that's going to go for a whole season.
I think USC will be decent. I think the true thing I can say about that game is, I'm going blank right now. What is their coach's name?
Lincoln
LSU's?
Riley.
No. I know he's
Brian
USC.
Kelly.
Brian Kelly, old Notre Dame coach.
Yeah.
He's just not a SEC coach.
No, and you go ahead. Sorry.
What LSU's been like, the defense and like good receivers and offense and cornerbacks, like that's not them anymore. He just doesn't have that element. I mean, I know Orgeron kind of took over that God squad that they had, but like they kind of have like a history of like being DBU. They call themselves DBU and they produce a ton of wide receivers in the draft.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brian Kelly's just not that guy to bring kids as. I don't think he's a good recruiter for the SEC.
Yeah.
He's just not an SEC coach in my mind.
Yeah. And honestly, I think you're going to find out a lot more about USC once they get into Big Ten play, because over the past several, for the time Lincoln Riley's been at USC, or heck, even when he was at Oklahoma, when they went up against a great defensive team, they struggled. And Big Ten is just smash mouth football. And, you look at Iowa. I mean,
I was going to say Iowa's like the cookie cutter version of a Big Ten team. No offense, all defense.
Yeah. So but you just never know. Like, I mean, maybe he finally made an adjustment and hired a competent defensive coordinator and is actually making strides as a head coach, because that's kind of been like his Achilles heel is his defense going back to his days at Oklahoma, where they're not going to depend on their offense their defense to win them a game and make a stop. It's all about just trying to score the last time.
It was kind of crazy this week I appreciate that game was more competitive. I thought a lot of the big games were kind of not very competitive, or at least,
especially the Saturday slate.
But that middle tier of the SEC really suffered this week. I mean, Florida losing to Miami, Texas A&M, which I don't know if we're talking about that game tonight. Notre Dame is going to be a good football team to go into Texas A&M and win that game.
Yeah.
For me, I think Connor Wegman's a really good quarterback. I mean, he was 4-1 before the injury last year. But Texas A&M losing and LSU losing to USC, those are like three middle of the pack teams in the SEC that kind of got blown out by other divisions this weekend.
Yeah, and it's just week one, so it's like I don't know, like I don't put a lot of emphasis into it. But like I said, it was LSU USC, which was a great game. Virginia Tech losing to Vanderbilt really caught me by surprise. Like, we're not going to get into that game, but I was very surprised Virginia Tech lost that game.
I have one thing to say about that game. Virginia Tech, I don't know if you saw before the season, they had a lot of hype built around them.
Mm-hmm.
They returned 21 of 22 players on their starting.
Yeah.
They went 6-6. How can you hype up a team that has that many players returning and go 6-6? So you're just pretty much promoting a 6-6 team that you think they're going to be better. Like, I just didn't get the hype from the same guys, and they go 6-6, and then it's like, oh yeah, they're going to be drastically better with the same coach. I'm not a believer in just gassing teams up for no reason.
And for people who don't know, Paul lives in Virginia. So Jamie Hewlin says, who's wearing the Mets jersey? Thought this was a Brave supported podcast. Jamie, this is Paul. It's a guy I met at a buddy's wedding last year. He is from Virginia. You have family from New York, or
I was
did
born
you live in New York at all?
Yeah,
okay.
I was born
so he's got some New York ties. So we're not going to hold it against him wearing now, he may not be back on if he wears another something Mets or but yeah, that's why he's on. So, and then, kind of discussing Florida State. So Jamie's hopping on. He's a Florida State fan. Yeah, I think you're seeing like a true coach Mike Norvell is. He's not that great. He's not that bad, but it's just meh. He's just a middle of the road coach.
They caught lightning in a bottle last year, I think. It was a one-hit season where they had to do what they had to do. They had to get in the playoffs, and it's unfortunate that they didn't get in, but they were going to be nothing without Jordan Travis anyways. Like, if they got into the playoffs, they were getting
Well,
smashed.
I think that's the great thing about the college football playoff this year, where it's like if that's how it was last year, they would have got in.
How many SEC teams get into the playoffs this year?
I don't know. That's a tough question because I mean you got 5 automatic bids. You got the 4. You got the SEC, Big 10, Big 12. I guess Pac-12 if that even exists anymore. ACC, excuse me.
Big 10, Big 12, SEC.
Yeah, and then you got a group of 5. So, I don't know. It just honest to God, it just depends. You got some Big 10 teams. I mean, you look at the Big 10, you got Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, USC, Oregon. I mean, those are 5 traditionally teams that are somewhere in around the top 10, 15 rankings at the end of the season. The SEC, you got Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas, Missouri,
Alabama.
Who else am I missing? Alabama,
Oklahoma.
Yeah. So there's 6 teams right there where those are flirting in the top 15 rankings at the end of the season. Then I
can see a case, 8 teams from Big 10, SEC.
It's going to be Big 10, SEC heavy, I believe. I'm just thinking Big 12. Who's the leader of the Big 12 this year? I mean, because it was Texas, Oklahoma. They're gone.
They've added some weird teams. They have UCF. Their division's weird. So
SMU's in the ACC now. So
I don't know. I would say 8 teams though from those 2 divisions.
Yeah, and then you got Bradley Post saying he thinks Notre Dame's going to take a spot. Which
I agree with that. I'm on board with that 100%. I think Notre Dame is way, way better than what people. That was an impressive win, whether you like it or not. Yeah. That's a tough.
Well, especially they had a young offensive line, I believe, or like a newish offensive line where they weren't as like veteran led. And I'm gonna look at Notre Dame's remaining schedule, which they're always a threat to make it. They always find a way to screw it up. Like I don't know why they're not an ACC team. I don't get it.
They love that though. Every Notre Dame fan I talk to, they love being in that like gray area, just being able to play whoever they can play. The one thing I'll give them credit for is they usually make their schedule like relatively competitive to where it makes sense. Where if they lose,
it's not a cupcake schedule.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hold on, I'm trying to find them.
The one thing I liked about that Notre Dame win too was Ryan Leonard, was the quarterback. The coach, Tim Elko, was his coach. Like he kind of knows his weaknesses too, so he can kind of game plan. I know obviously your defense has to do the work out there, but he can kind of game plan, against Ryan Leonard's strengths and weaknesses as well.
Yeah. All right. So this is Notre Dame's remaining schedule. So they got Northern Illinois this weekend, Purdue, Miami of Ohio, Louisville, bye week. Stanford's another odd random team that's in the ACC now. Georgia Tech, Navy, bye week, Florida State, Virginia, Army, USC. So really, on paper,
could be an undefeated season.
Did you know that? Watch out for Georgia Tech. Apparently, I saw something where Brent Key, since he's been at the helm at Georgia Tech, hasn't lost to a top 10 team.
I think Haynes King's very good. That's a good team.
But I think you look at the Georgia Tech Florida State game in Ireland a couple weeks ago. I think that's the benefit of sticking around and not just bolting for the transfer portal. Like you stay put, you put in the work, and it shows. It's benefiting them. Granted, it's only week 2, but they've started out really good this season. So yeah, honestly, if Notre Dame, the thing that. It won't really affect them this year, but in years past, what hurts Notre Dame is not playing in a conference championship game, where it's you have one last week to impress, and then let's just say normally the SEC championship or you have those two teams are vying for one of those, or they're vying for those playoff spots, and you have a like, let's just say Georgia, Alabama from last year. Let's just say Alabama was number 5 and Georgia's number 1, and Alabama won. And so, unfortunately, Georgia didn't make it, but they're not going to then put Notre Dame in front of Georgia because they didn't play a conference championship game. So, yeah, I mean, Notre Dame definitely has a big chance. We'll see. I mean, I think this is a big season for
I think
Marcus
they have a
Freeman.
ceiling, Notre Dame. Like you said, there's a world they go undefeated this year in the regular season, but that doesn't technically get you a bye because you didn't win a conference championship, like you said. So now you're a fifth seed and you go, and let's say you get a 2-loss Oregon team or a 2-loss Ole Miss team. In that scenario, I don't see Notre Dame beating one of those two teams. So that's where it could hurt them in the playoffs.
But you also have to think in years past where Notre Dame did make the college football playoff, and they just get boat raced by whoever they play, whether it's Alabama. I don't know if they ever played Clemson in the playoff, but I don't think they've won a playoff game the few times they've made it.
Yeah.
So it's Notre Dame definitely has a driver's seat to get into the playoff this year, with it being 12 teams, which I like because it adds, I like how being a conference champion in the Major Four in the group of in a group of 5 gets an automatic bid.
Because and you get a bye too, which is nice. You don't have to play an extra game.
So yeah, that's a big deal. So let's kind of get into the games this week. We're going to start out with the Gamecocks, unfortunately. So South Carolina is going to travel to Kentucky this Saturday afternoon, 3:30 ABC. They got at the time when I made the sheet, the over-under was set at 42.5, and Kentucky are 10-point favorites, which I think is a fair line. This is, like I said earlier, this is just a matchup that gives South Carolina fits. Like, it's usually a good game, but if Kentucky ever has like a playmaker, it's usually at the running back position or like a slot receiver who can double as like a running back. Under Stoops, South Carolina just always struggles. And unfortunately, I didn't get to see any of their game against Southern Miss last weekend. But this game makes me nervous. After what I saw last week with us against Old Dominion, and the more I, look at the clips, and Steven even sent me a message off the air because he, unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be able to join us tonight, is, the more he watched highlights or clips from the game, a lot of it was on Lenore Sellers. And I said this on our recap show, our recap show and our preview, where I think people hyped him up way too much and forgot that he is he's basically a true freshman. And there's a big difference being the guy that's leading a college football team compared to coming in last year and just playing garbage time minutes where you were dominating the team you were playing, like Furman and Vanderbilt, and there really wasn't much on the line. And you saw last week, I mean, he's got a lot to improve on, and it's easy to kind of fault the coaches, but as days have gone past since that game, it's tough when you have a true freshman quarterback.
Yeah, you got to give him time and let him work out the kinks pretty much, I said it about DJ Lagway. Luckily, we have Samford this week, which was an easier game for him to kind of navigate, the woes that he'll face throughout the season. He'll probably throw an interception this week, I'll say, but he'll have a decently good game. And unfortunately for Sellers, he kind of had that with Ole Miss, but then he showed, those ugly moments for himself, not, hitting those easy passes, maybe not hitting check downs, just not being able to, drive the offense down the field.
Yeah.
Now, like I said earlier, there's levels to this. It steps up drastically. So the question will be, will he elevate his game to what Kentucky's going to be able to bring? Because Stoops is going to game plan really well. He's done it all of his years. Their defense is usually pretty stout. Like you said, I don't know too much. I didn't get to watch their game either. I haven't heard anything. I know they don't have their running backs that they've had. They had Snell, then they had the kid last year. I'm going blank on his name, but he was very good.
Yeah.
And I don't know about wide receivers, so I'm not sure they have that playmaker. So that may
Yeah.
help you guys out a little bit. But the
Mhm.
big question will be, can Sellers up his game?
Yeah. And
Because
unfortunately,
that's the question.
and this is tough to say, but Beamer's really not in a position where he can have a transition year where Lenoris gets a ton of experience, because if he continues to struggle and it doesn't look good, I mean, do you make a change and put in Robbie Ashford, or do you just let Lenoris kind of ride it out and see what he does? I don't like our offensive coordinator. I think we could have done a lot better than Dow Loggins. And like I said at the beginning of the show, it seems to me, based off like the insider stuff that I'm reading, is the issues we had with Satterfield is what we're having with Loggins, and where it's like he thinks he knows everything. He doesn't need to have input from the other offensive coaches on the staff, and he's been a failure at every stop he's made. Like, I think he was voted the worst OC in the NFL when he was with the Jets. And unless he makes huge changes, it's going to be on Beamer to make a change. It's like, do you make a change and put Mike Shula, as who's an analyst, as the OC? Because I mean, you can't allow what we saw last week to continue for 11 more games, because if it does and we lose and we look like hot trash, he's going to be out of a job, I think. And again, if you want to hitch your wagon to that and you're comfortable with that when you go to bed at night, I mean, I don't know what else to say.
I think you guys get like you said, week one's kind of just like a toss up in the air. You don't know what you're going to get from
Yeah.
teams. I think this week you'll get a really good gauge of what this South Carolina team is going to be this season.
Yeah.
I know it's only week 2, but
Yeah.
Kentucky's that middle tier of SEC teams. If you struggle and get blown out, you're going to
Yeah.
see that pretty much predominantly
Mhm.
through the whole season, I would imagine.
Yeah. And like I said, it's like, again, I know there's going to be growing pains, but it's just, unfortunately, Beamer doesn't have that luxury of having a year like that where you take your lumps, and that's what we did last year when we had Spencer Rattler, who's probably not the most in terms of win wise, but probably the best quarterback that's ever come out of South Carolina
Mhm.
in several years. Like, I mean, I loved Connor Shaw when he was at South Carolina. I wish we had him still, but with what we had with Spencer Rattler and the results we did with the offense that we had, it's a toss up. And then Bradley Poston posted, and Bradley, his name is Quashid Scott. He was with Marion Swamp Fox last year. He's a true freshman. I don't even know how they play him I think he may be like an athlete, like he might be on the offense, but I think he could play defense as well. So, we have a local guy that we cover here with Two Guys Talking Sports. Will be on TV against Gamecocks this week. But in me fashion, I'm going to pick South Carolina to win. I'm going to take them in the points. We can't gamble here in South Carolina, but I know Paul can gamble in Virginia.
I'm a
So
gambling man.
if you're going to gamble responsibly. So yeah, I'm going to take South Carolina in the points this weekend.
So I bet on South Carolina twice with Kyle. One on our good friend's bachelor party.
Mm-hmm.
It was, who did they play that?
That was North Carolina.
Yeah, opening week,
North
right?
Carolina.
Opening week, yeah. Crazy to think about.
We were on his bachelor party.
It did not bode well for me, obviously. The second time was Evan's wedding. They played a lesser
Vanderbilt.
opponent.
It's Vanderbilt.
But I
that
took
one
the
worked
points.
out.
I took the points, which was like hefty. I think it was like 18 or 19 and a half, and they ended up blowing them out, which was good.
We cover that one big time.
If I had to pick for this game off the top of my head, and I'm very wishy-washy, I like to fade myself. If I'm hot, I'll ride it. But if it was out South Carolina, I'd probably take Carolina in the points. I think the fact that it's at Kentucky, and I only have 1 week to go off of, and the ODU game, it has to scare you guys as South Carolina fans. That team could come out again this week, and you could look like Florida against Miami, truthfully.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that it's at Kentucky, I know this is a South Carolina podcast. I hate to say it, but I think I'd take Kentucky in the 10.
Yeah. I think the one thing maybe, and I don't know how traditionally if Kentucky's like a tough place to play, but it is a 3:30 kickoff, so it's like I feel like even the tougher stadiums aren't as necessarily tough in quotation mark, like air quotes, tough during the like early in the day. It's like the nighttime. There's nothing like a nighttime game at Williams-Brice Stadium. There's nothing like a nighttime game in Clemson and Death Valley or LSU or Alabama. Like they're still loud, but it's just something about where the fans have all day to
100%.
tailgate or whatnot and get ready compared to like if it's a noon kickoff or a 3:30 kickoff, it's not as rowdy and ruckus.
There was a game last week I thought that had that effect. I think the game would have been a little bit different. I think Penn
Yeah.
State would have beat Virginia, but if that game was a 7 o'clock kickoff
Who?
in West Virginia and Penn State played, but it
Yeah.
was
Oh, you
12
said
o'clock
Virginia.
kickoff.
Sorry.
You guess you didn't hear West, sorry.
Sorry.
But if
Yeah.
that game I think is played at 7 o'clock in Morgantown, I
Yeah.
think it's a lot tighter of a
Yeah.
game.
Happy Valley at night. I mean, the one thing I don't like about the Big Ten is that their big games are at noon. Like I know it's big noon kickoff, and you can't really compete with ABC and ESPN all the time. But like the fact that Texas, I mean, I like it from a fan standpoint, but the fact that, and we'll get to this in a little bit, the fact that Texas and Michigan kicks off at noon on Saturday is insane. As big as a game that is. So, and I have a friend, she went to Kentucky, and I kid you not, like anytime we're together and like South Carolina and Clemson play, it just, yeah, I can't stand. I can't. That's why I don't like watching games with a lot of people unless they're Carolina fans, because I turn into a different creature or person when I watch Carolina football. It's the only sport I'm like that.
I got to experience it.
Yeah. Well, luckily the North Carolina game, I was at the house we rented by myself. I was like, I don't think y'all. I was like, y'all just met me yesterday or 2 days ago. Y'all may not like me watching this Carolina game. And then when I met y'all out that night, after I think it was
they kind of made a comeback when you got to the bar. Yeah, they kind of made a comeback and then they threw it away at the end.
It's typical South Carolina fashion, but yeah. So I'm curious to see what our offense is going to look like this week if we've made any changes. Like I know, like I said, if it's an issue with Sellers, there's only so much a coach can do. Like you need game time experience to get acclimated to college football, and that's making reads or not just running the ball, or even the way he was throwing some passes, like he just didn't look comfortable back there, and there's probably some jitters, and so hopefully it's a little bit better this week. So, but like I said, they play on ABC 3:30 this Saturday, 3:30 kickoff. Let's hope we start, we'll be 2-0 after this time next week. So we'll see. Going into the next game, we have the Clemson Tigers versus Appalachian State Mountaineers. And a buddy of mine, his name's Ian. He went to App State, and I talk with him about sports kind of like I do you, Paul. And this feels like a trap game for Clemson, where I think they're gonna win, but App State plays these games very closely. They
pull wins out of the bag all the time in a game like this.
I mean,
they're notoriously known for winning a game like this.
I mean, they took North Carolina to overtime last year. The previous year they beat Texas A&M. I mean, then you have the famous block field goal against Michigan several years ago. I mean, this isn't an easy week 2 game for Clemson, especially the way their offense looked last week.
Yeah.
This isn't an easy game. And again, I think Clemson wins. I mean, they're over a 2-touchdown favorite.
17.5.
And that's at the time we're filming this. But again, I think this is a tricky game for Clemson. What you think?
I'm the opposite. We're not seeing eye to eye tonight at all. I think that defense is very good. I mean, I think the fact of that game last week was Kirby Smart was able to go into the locker room at halftime. It was a competitive game by half.
Yeah.
I mean, the score, there's no real offense going on. Kirby Smart went in there and, was able to tinker. But he has the weapons and ability of athletes to go out there and do that, where Clemson may not have that on the offensive side of the ball. And I think Carson Beck's a lot better than Cade Klubnik. I do think Cade Klubnik is very good.
Yeah.
But Oh, you don't like
I
him?
don't agree with you on that. And I'm not just saying that as a Gamecock fan. I think Clemson, and me and Steven have both said this, like Dabo and his like staff have royally, like maybe not royally is the right word, but they have completely whiffed on the quarterback position ever since they lost Trevor. I mean, they just had two generational talent quarterbacks in Deshaun and Trevor, but outside those 8 years, because I mean they were there for 4 years apiece. Outside those 8 years, Clemson's their quarterback play has been very mediocre. Their offense has honestly been very mediocre, where their defense has always been elite and insanely good, but they haven't, to me, they're not a team that scares you, at least on the offensive side of the ball. And the thing with last week against Georgia, yeah, Georgia has the pieces, but I'm sorry, if Clemson's going to say or think they're a top team, that's not an excuse. I'm like, if you're vying or think you can make the college football playoff, it's not like you're not going to play them again.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is. I mean, they brought in Garrett Riley, who was, at the time the top assistant in the country, won the Broyles Award, and it just hasn't panned out. Like Clemson, they don't have a lot of offensive weapons on the outside. I mean, the true freshman they have May, but with what they put out last week, not any good. But at the height of their peak, when they were winning national championships or going to the college football playoffs, I mean, look at their receivers that they had. I mean, they had Sammy Watkins, Martavis Bryant, DeAndre Hopkins. Who else am I thinking of?
They had one really good one like recently, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, they had 3 and 4 insanely legit receivers, and now it's just there's nobody that jumps off the page that scares you. But like
Higgins?
I said,
Clemson?
Yeah, they had T. Higgins. The last time they won the national championship, I know he was on the team. I mean, Hunter Renfrow, from right down the road in Socastee, Adam Humphreys. It just
Mike Williams. That's a good pull.
Yeah, Mike Williams. It just Clemson, and that may stem from when Jeff Scott left, because he left before Tony Elliott did, and Tony Elliott is the head coach at Virginia now, and I think Jeff Scott is in some capacity with Clemson now. It might be an off the field role, but I mean, they have truly struggled on the offensive side of the ball, and
I agree.
it just had, and it's the thing is they haven't fixed it. Like, this is Cade's second full year in this offense, and he hasn't progressed at all. And I don't know if that's lack of coaching, or he's just not that good, or they've put that much pressure on him. But it's not like the mistakes he made in the beginning of the year last year, he still makes them now. And, it's all good and fine when you can score 30 points against the Citadel or 40 points or whoever. But when you play these top teams like a Georgia, if you're going to make the playoffs, and I still think they have a chance to do that, you don't know with Miami, because I feel like Mario Cristobal is a very overrated coach. I don't think he's a good coach at all.
I think he's terrible, but where we're talking about the downfall of Cade Klubnik not going to win you a game, Cam Ward can go win you a game. And that's the rabbit in the hat for Cristobal this year. Cam Ward will save him a lot more than it'll look like he's doing a good job coaching.
Yeah. And I mean, and even Clemson's running backs, they just had talent galore, and I feel like they just don't have that now. And I'm glad as a Gamecock, but as like a person who does a show that covers them, you can argue Dabo's ineptitude or whatever to not address issues with the portal. And I don't always think going to the portal is the right thing. Like I said earlier, like, you can get pieces to fill in a few holes, but it just, to me, it just hasn't, there's nothing special about Clemson. Like you could say when they had Deshaun and Trevor, I mean, there's just nothing that jumps off the page on the offensive side of the ball. Now their defense is just absolutely insane, and that saves them a lot. But again, if you can't make the thing that with Georgia last week is they made big halftime adjustments and Clemson didn't.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Also, I think that halftime score where Clemson's defense is very good, I think it was a little bit misleading. If you watch the game, there's a couple of plays where like Carson Beck, I want to say Kirby said it at halftime. He goes, Carson's got to read the field a little bit better. We had some plays open that he just didn't read it and
Yeah.
get the passes down the field pretty much. Where he's
Yeah.
like, we should have 14 to 21 points. Carson's just not seeing it. So
Yeah.
maybe it was just like a rust from Georgia not being into the game yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I still think Clemson wins. I think they're going to beat App State, but I think it's going to be a close game. Or not.
I would take App State. I'll take App State in the points. I think 17.5 is a ton. If Clemson does when I say somewhere between 10 and 14, I think you'll learn a lot about that game in like the first quarter. I think Clemson's going to try and use Maffa and just run it down App State's throat. So if App State can, hold the run and, make Klubnik throw the ball, it gives them a real good chance to go out and maybe, steal a win or at least, keep it within like 7.
Yeah, because let's look at Clemson. They've got it's crazy. They got a bye week after the second week, but they got a bye week next week. Then they've got NC State, Stanford, Florida State, Wake, Virginia, bye week, Louisville, Virginia Tech, Pitt, Citadel, South Carolina. So, I mean, their schedule isn't insanely tough, but the thing with Clemson over the past couple of years, they always have like a trap game where they should win, but they just they don't look good. But I think Clemson rebounds this week. I think it's going to be closer or tougher than what they expect. But honestly, knowing Clemson, they could come out and win by 42 points. Mm-hmm. That you just never know with Clemson. So, I think if I had to take a line or the points, I'm going to take the over/under, and I'm going to take the over.
What is it?
Is that right now? It's at 52.5.
That's
but Clemson's at home. It's a night.
That's a trap
game.
door there, buddy. That's a trap door.
I know. It just, but that's just Clemson for you. Like again, they can come out and score. They can come out and drop 40 points this week.
Yeah, I think they're going to run the ball, take a lot of clock, and I think App State's going to try and slow the game down, make it long possessions, try and do a bunch of screens, run the ball against Clemson's defense, which probably isn't going to work out too well for them. But they've got to find a way to slow the game down, not give.
And they need to put pressure on Cade Klubnik because it just feels like he can't, at least from what I can see, it just doesn't handle it well and can't make good decisions. But yeah,
what's that? I just want to state my Kentucky bet -10. I do like that. Clemson versus App State. If anyone's tailing these picks here from either one of us, don't take my word for this game because it is very tough to get a read on a team like App State. Mm-hmm. I'm not watching a ton of App State. I don't know how much you're watching, but App State is notoriously known for being a decent, team. But
they're a Sun Belt team. I mean, the Sun Belt honestly is a very tough conference. Yeah. They're a very tough conference for a group of 5.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Coastal, like I said, you got App State, Georgia State. I mean, there's 4 or 5 teams that are solid. They're not
Louisiana,
like
Lafayette.
Jump off the page, like in terms of like big time football. But yeah, they're nobody to sleep on. Like this isn't a game where like South Carolina should have been last week against Old Dominion. Where like okay, Old Dominion's a Sun Belt team, but like Carolina,
Old Dominion's Conference USA.
Are you sure?
Positive. You about to fact check me?
I am.
Unless it just switched, they've been Conference USA.
No, they're Sun Belt, bro. Or they just play a lot of Sun Belt teams this year.
Maybe they switched. So many of them switched, but I thought they were.
Well, because like I'm pretty positive I saw the Sun Belt patch on their jersey because I mean they play Coastal, Georgia State, Texas State, Georgia Southern, App State, James Madison, Marshall. Those are all Sun Belt teams.
Interesting.
So say, Kyle, I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm talking about.
I will not
bow down to daddy.
We'll get into it later. Listen. We'll get into it later about who knows more. Wait till that Premier League session comes up. You did a great job picking this week.
Yeah, I know. 2 points. All right. So what are you taking Clemson in the points or App State?
Nah, I think Clemson wins by like 10 to 14. So give me App State in this. I think 17.5 is too much for this game.
Yeah.
Especially, like I said, to a team like App State, who's known for being a decent, Power 5 school.
I wish sports gambling was legal in South Carolina, which, I mean, we're not technically far from the North Carolina border, but in terms of South Carolina, that way we could kind of keep up with our picks and everything. All right. So the next matchup we're going to talk about is your Florida Gators. Now, there was not much when I was making this sheet, and I even looked before we came on. There's no official line set or over under. But Florida's back at home this Saturday, 7 p.m. kickoff, SEC Network. Like you said earlier, Graham Mertz is out with a concussion. So true freshman DJ, was it Lagway?
Lagway
Gets the nod. What are your thoughts going into this game?
will be quick and easy. This is going to be bad for Sanford.
You think?
I just think after getting embarrassed like that, do I think Florida's going to be a good team? No.
Yeah.
I'm not putting my stock in Florida, but you just got blown out against an in-state rival, which I didn't even get to tell you earlier. They had about 32 recruits at the game, about 16 5-stars.
Oh, yeah.
And
all the Miami players were telling them to come.
Yeah, you know how bad that looks? So, this
yeah.
team has to have, a fire lit under them. I think DJ's Lagway, with his feet, will be able to beat Stanford, and what really, we're talking about times of game. This could not be a worse time of night for Stanford to go into the swamp and play a 7 o'clock game at night. That elevates this to a whole nother level for them. I think it's a blowout. The points are probably too high. You can't trust Florida, and the points is probably somewhere between 25 to 30, I'd say, especially being in the swamp. So don't take the points. Don't put too much stock in the Gators. But this is probably a 38-14 or a 45-7. It's going to be quick and easy. And
do you think you're gonna have any moment during that game where you're just like, what the heck is going on?
No, not at all. The one thing that DJ will be able to do that Graham won't be able to do is, and he's not going to get pressured a ton, I don't think, but he's able to run the ball, and that's a huge thing in college football, mobile quarterbacks. He's very good at running. I think his senior year, he was Gatorade Player of the Year. I think he rushed for 800 yards, 9 touchdowns, then threw for 3,000 yards or something like that. The kid's an athlete. It's going to take some time. And the one negative thing would be if Napier is to go, hopefully he stays. Hopefully we're bringing a quarterback or a coach that'll be able to keep him as quarterback and bring in a good quarterback coach, because we don't have that currently.
Yeah.
But this kid's electric, and I think he's going to be good in the long run, whether he stays at Florida or not.
Yeah. And like I said, I always get nervous with the big time dual threat that are actually a legit threat to run the ball, where it's especially the game is just happening so fast, and they may just set into a panic and just not progress and wait and just take off and run. That's what we saw with Lenore Sellers last week. And he even admitted to saying that, where he just didn't trust himself, essentially.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say is, just from looking at him, he is a true passer first that has the ability to run. He's a big boy too. He's like Cam Newton body.
Yeah,
he's a big.
That's what I heard. So we'll see.
Like I said, quick and easy. We won't have to spend too much time on this. Florida's gonna handle business here, but like I said, it's not gonna get pretty for the Gators after this. It gets rough, like you said. They go through the gauntlet. In week 4 to week 8, it gets real bad.
Yeah, South Carolina and Florida have some, and I think Florida's is a little bit tougher this year.
We have the toughest schedule in all of college
I think y'all are 1 and we're 2.
It's funny
at where it was in the preseason rankings.
It's funny they showed the top 25 hardest schedules, and all the SEC teams are in there because they're all just playing against each other, which makes it super
because I'm pretty positive the SEC you play one more SEC game now, right?
Yeah, and you play more of the West. Traditionally, the West has been known as the powerhouse in the SEC. So more of these East teams are having to go play more West teams. We don't play each other this year, Florida and South Carolina, but we're playing in Texas. We're playing in Ole Miss again, where we normally don't play those teams.
Yeah, South Carolina doesn't have to play Georgia, Texas, or Tennessee this year.
Lucky you. We got Tennessee, Georgia, we have Texas, and we have Ole Miss.
Yeah, it's can you hear me by chance?
I can.
Okay, I feel like my mic's going out, or it might be my headset, or I might be deaf in one ear now. So not much time spending on the Florida game. If it was a bigger matchup, probably would, but it's Sanford. So
7 p.m. Swamp, it should be easy. Yeah.
I did enjoy the game I did go to in Florida. Like I said, we won the East, so it was, it was easy to enjoy that night there. But next game, which I think is going to be a dang good game, is Tennessee NC State. They're playing at Bank of America Stadium where the Panthers play. This is probably going to be the best game that plays at that stadium this year because the Panthers are just awful and David Tepper's the worst owner in sports. But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. Line is currently set over under 61.5 points. Tennessee, essentially a touchdown favorite. Quite frankly, I think Tennessee is just going to destroy NC State.
I think so. Let me get into a little backstory here. Caitlin is from
Caitlin's his
Southwest.
wife.
Caitlin is my wife. Yeah, she's from the Southwest part of Virginia. Her whole family lives in Tennessee. They're all massive Tennessee fans. So
Yeah.
I know I kind of, just surround myself with people that like all the teams that are rivals against of my teams,
Yeah.
which is a terrible thing to do. Don't
Yeah.
do it. Because all my friends are Braves fans as well, so I get it all the time. But they're very high on Nico, and something that they said to me when I was just there was, "Look what Heupel was able to do with Milton at quarterback. Imagine what he's going to be able to do with Nico." Like,
Yeah.
I think
And
Nico is the
Hooker.
truth. Yeah, I think Nico's the truth.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
It's scary what he can do with that offense for Tennessee.
he's a good coach. I actually like him. I think he's a
Yeah.
very good coach.
Yeah. I agree.
If I was to bet on this game, I think give me the over. I think there's going to be a ton of points.
Oh,
and
yeah.
give me Tennessee minus the 7.5.
Yeah. Like, and I feel like NC State is just a team where they are good, but
They're
like
scrappy. They hang in
you just
games.
don't know what you're going to get from them. I mean, they got Grayson McCall, quarterback who transferred from Coastal last year. He's still kind of getting acclimated. I guess the only positive for NC State is that it's a neutral site game, so it's almost like a home game for them.
Mhm.
But
It's
Tennessee's
not that
scary,
far,
man.
though.
Tennessee's scary, though. Tennessee's
They're
a
good.
very scary team.
I have them as a playoff team.
Yeah, I mean, they very well could be one of those teams. So it's
If I'm not mistaken, if you can pull out their schedule, I think a lot of their hard games too are at home. So playing in Neyland is not an
Tennessee.
easy task. Yeah,
I think they play at Georgia this year.
that's truthfully in the SEC. I think you can lose 2 games and still get in the playoffs.
But Georgia's also not really a tough place to play. Like they are a very insecure fan base because Kirby Smart's going to try to find any and every way to make it seem like the world is against the Georgia Bulldogs. And I think it was Tonka Hemingway, who's a defensive lineman for Carolina. At SEC Media Days, they asked him, and I'm paraphrasing the question, but it's like, it was either like, what's your favorite away game you've played at, or what's the toughest away game you've played or away stadium you played in? And I think he said Texas A&M. And Georgia fans ran with it and essentially made it seem like he said Georgia wasn't a tough place to play. And just like they're just a very insecure fan base. Honestly, if as like a fan, a Gamecock fan, I would not care if Georgia, Tennessee, or Clemson ever won another football game. I absolutely.
I'm with you.
It's Clemson, Georgia, Tennessee. I can't stand those 3 teams. And I have a lot of friends who are Clemson fans, and I would not care if they never won another game. But after NC State, Tennessee's, so their toughest remaining games to me, they're at Oklahoma September 21st. They play Florida, but it's at home
let me
on
say
October
something.
12th.
As much as they are significantly better than us, even when they have their best teams, we're there Kentucky for you guys. For some reason, the weirdest stuff happens. I know you've seen the 20-yard screen play with Callaway, the bomb to I'm going blank on the receiver's name, but we beat them in some weird, odd ways. And even their good teams, we beat them like when they're significantly better. So
and they've got Alabama at home October 19th. Then they got a bye week. Then they've got Kentucky, Mississippi State. Then they're at Georgia on November 16th, and they've got UTEP and Vanderbilt. So they've got
their schedule isn't that hard, honestly.
No, so on paper, they've got 3 tough games remaining.
That Alabama game's a good one.
And 2 of them are on the road and 1 is at home.
Yeah. So and I'm not putting a lot of stock in Oklahoma. I got to see that in the SEC. I think Texas translates a lot better than Oklahoma, which we probably won't get in that. But I think Oklahoma probably loses like 3 games in the SEC this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's very possible. But yeah, I'm going to take – I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. So I would take the over and Tennessee minus 7.5 in this one. So next game, we got 2 more. That's Texas at Michigan, big noon kickoff this Saturday on Fox. Michigan didn't really look that great last week. They did play Fresno State, won 30-10, but nothing crazy to jump off the paper. I feel like anytime you lose, they lost a lot from last year's staff.
Coach.
Coach.
They
lost Harbaugh. They lost Mentor. They lost a lot. I still think Sharon Moore is he's a great head coach. But, a little bit of offensive identity. They lost, McCarthy. They lost Corum. I mean, they still have Edwards. I mean, what's the quarterback's name? Origi or something? Origi, something like that.
Yeah, I don't want to butcher it.
Again, this is one of those games I don't like how, it's – and I get it why Fox does it so they don't compete with ABC and ESPN at night. But if this game was at night, I would take Michigan. I think Texas is going to win. Just because when I went to a Michigan game a few years back, and granted they played Southern Miss, so it wasn't like a big time matchup, but it just wasn't that impressed with the atmosphere of it, where it wasn't as loud as I thought it would be. But again, it may have been because it was an early game and it was Southern Miss. So, but this is Texas. I think Texas wins this game. They have an established offense. Michigan's could be finding their own, but it's completely different, like philosophies. Texas wants to spread you out, throw the ball. Michigan wants to bulldoze you and run it down your throat.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to be able to do that against Texas, to be honest. Texas is both sides of the ball. Trenches are very, very good.
Yeah.
But give me Texas by a lot. I think 14-21, I'd say. I think it's going to be bad.
2 to 3 touchdowns?
Yeah. I just think, like you said, just losing Harbaugh, they lost, receivers, they lost their quarterback, they lost their running back. They lost a lot of what made them good. Like Blake Corum, there's reports that Blake Corum may be splitting half the carries with Kyron Williams for the Rams. And that's how good he is.
Yeah.
Michigan fans, you have the luxury of just, taking the season off, retool, get your coach involved, celebrate your national championship. You can use that all year. You can go around saying, well,
I mean, they still have the investigation going on. I mean,
that's a big factor, dude. Connor Stallions, is he at Texas practice right now, today, tomorrow, the next day?
Did you watch the documentary on Netflix?
Awesome. I loved it. People are giving him a bad rap. You gotta love the guy. Who loves ball more than that guy?
Yeah, the fact that he, regardless if you think he was at these other games or paid for his friends to go, he loves Michigan football. And I mean, if he was on the staff and that's his job, I'm sure there's people on college football. Stealing signs is not something that is unheard of in college football. And I mean, if you can't disguise your hand signals, which you don't have to worry about it now because they have the electronics in the headsets, but I remember a backup quarterback in the Lou Holtz era. His name was Eric Kimry, and he was actually he was an assistant in Beamer's first year. He was the tight ends coach, and he was the backup quarterback to Phil Petty. And I remember hearing one year when we beat Clemson is that he was able to decipher figure out their play calls on the sidelines, with the way they're motioning it. So that's not something that's taboo or you don't hear about, but the whole issue with him is and the only rule you're not allowed to do in college football is you can't advance scout. So if South Carolina is playing, Texas in 4 weeks, they can't send somebody to watch them play Michigan on Saturday. And so that's the issue they're getting with Connor Stallions. So I mean, I liked it, but honestly, those stories that Netflix does, it's just it's
It
almost
probably
just
would
like a puff piece. Like the
it would have
stuff
been
with
better as
Johnny,
an ESPN 30 for 30.
yeah, like the one they did on Johnny Manziel, like I didn't like it. Like it,
No, I also thought Swamp Kings wasn't that good. There's a lot of
no,
stuff that was
they
missing
left
on the
out so
storyline.
much stuff.
Yeah,
Like
so
how
much stuff.
essentially, I don't think anybody really liked Tim Tebow. I mean, they left out a whole bunch of stuff about the
All of our
Pouncey
convicts,
twins.
all of our convicts. You could say we
Yeah,
were a bunch of murderers and
yeah.
convicts.
I mean Aaron Hernandez, but like there's so much stuff they didn't talk about. It was almost just like a puff piece for Urban
Yeah,
Meyer.
but
And I mean, his time with the Jaguars was a nightmare. But again, I think Quinn Ewers, this offense for Texas with Sarkisian, Sarkisian's really turned around. Same thing with Lane Kiffin. Like they did that year with like a head of height, or at least Sarkisian did had that hiatus after his issues at USC, and then becomes like an analyst for Alabama. And then when Lane Kiffin takes the FAU job, Sarkisian takes the offensive coordinator. I mean, he's done a dang good job at Texas, and I think I think it's gonna be a close game just because it's Big Ten football and it's tougher and it's not as much spread out. And Michigan generally has a great defense, but I'm definitely going to take the Texas in the points.
yeah, it'll be interesting. I wish this game. I mean, we almost got it last year. I wish it was played last year. I know both of them were in the playoffs, and we almost got that matchup. But
Yeah,
these two teams with both their rosters would have been awesome to watch.
yeah.
Just
And
real quick before
yeah,
Connor Stallion story is,
yeah,
people like use that to say why they won the national championship, which is just so unfalse because they went to beat Ohio State. They went to beat Penn State, if I'm not mistaken, in the who they play in the Big Ten championship. They played. It wasn't Penn State.
Iowa. It was Iowa.
It was Iowa. They beat Iowa,
Yeah.
then they go and beat Alabama, and then they go beat Washington, all without stealing signs. So that team was going to win the national championship
And
with
and
or without
again,
the sign stealing.
yeah, like and but it's I don't know. Like my issue with the whole thing is I hate how Jim Harbaugh is like playing coy to it. He knew what was going on, and the thing is, even if he didn't know, there's a huge thing in the NCAA rule books or stuff they love to penalize teams for. It's called lack of institutional control. I mean, that's SMU back in the day when they had, Eric Dickerson and where'd you go?
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, sorry, the video kicked out. There it goes. But the big thing with them was lack of institutional control. And at the end of the day, just like in a big corporation, the CEO answers for everything. The head coach answers for everything in college football. And you can't tell me he did not know. The head coach of a major college football program knows what's going on inside that building. You can play coy all you want to.
Those Harbaugh brothers.
He knew what was going on.
Those Harbaugh brothers are kind of shady.
So, all right. Last but not least,
I'm pumped for this game. I'm so stoked for this game.
Colorado versus Nebraska.
They are the biggest frauds, dude.
Colorado.
Oh, so bad.
I think people's animosity towards Colorado is just like how quick they were, like the media deemed them the darlings of college football last year, where they started out the season against TCU, which, them kind of where they hit lightning in a bottle in that one year, making it to the national championship game. These are just two teams. I just don't think they're very good, but I think this is going to be a great game between the two of them. Colorado's defense can't stop anybody. I think they made great strides in the offseason, kind of revamping their offensive line and protecting Shedeur, because I honestly think Shedeur is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Travis Hunter, if the Heisman Trophy wasn't what it was, where it just goes to the best quarterback on the best team, Travis Hunter would win the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah,
I mean, he was on the field for every play last week except for 2 plays. I think they said there's 114 plays played between both teams. He was on the field for 112 of them.
It's like the Shohei Ohtani effect, pitching and hitting.
Yeah.
It's like this guy does it both ways. And I mean, that game was close. North Dakota State was in that game, and I mean, he had a big touchdown. I want to say middle to early fourth quarter. he's awesome, and Shador is very good. I agree with that.
Yeah, and
Their defense is just terrible.
yeah.
It is awful. They let
Shiloh Sanders was on South Carolina. He came as a freshman, and then I think he left when we fired Muschamp, and then went and played for his dad at Jacksonville State for that 1 year before they all went to Colorado.
I don't know what I was watching that game last week, the North Dakota State game and Colorado game, and North Dakota State's quarterback, I don't know his name, I wish I did, but he was running all through that Colorado defense, just cutting them up. And I think they have a tough matchup. I actually like Dylan Raiola. I think he's going to be a good quarterback.
You know what my issue with
right away.
You know what my issue with Nebraska is?
Rule?
Their offensive coordinator.
Oh,
he came from South Carolina, Marcus Satterfield. I mean, he's not a great offensive coordinator. There were players for South Carolina coming out after like week 1 a few years ago, his last season with us, where they're talking about how like he's calling stuff they've never even practiced for. They don't even know what he's calling, and it just makes it so complicated. And I just think last week is an anomaly. Like he'll have a game where he has a great game. But I'm going to go, I don't want to pick any of the spread or the points or anything, or the over under the spread, but I think Nebraska is going to win this because it's at Nebraska and Colorado's defense just can't stop anybody. But you'll kind of have an idea, like you just don't know what you're going to get with Satterfield with his play calling.
Yeah.
Pat Mahomes Jr. and Dylan Raiola.
Yeah, if I had to choose this bet, I think 7.5 is too much. So if I'm going straight off just the spread, I'd go Colorado. I do a little finessing in my gambling. I'd probably buy the points down for Nebraska to like 6.5 or 6 to give them a touchdown gap. I just think they'd probably win by maybe a touchdown. So if you're a gambling person, buy the points down to like 6, and I would take Nebraska. If it was 6, I would take Nebraska, but where it's 7.5, probably go Colorado.
And do this all responsibly, please.
Yes, please.
Do this all responsibly. But I think Nebraska wins this game.
You said, at home, and I think Dylan Raiola is a way better quarterback than what they saw from North Dakota State, and he can run as well. So if he uses his legs, it could get ugly. Yeah.
So I mean, we got not a big time matchups like we did last weekend, but needless to say, we still have college football. So let's go Gamecocks, boo Clemson.
It's good to have football back, to be honest.
It is. And I mean, honestly, I'm pumped for high school football. I'll be, before we get off the football subject, I'll be at the JV game. If there's anybody that's watching the show that follows us for our high school content, we'll be at the Dillon JV football game tomorrow night on Thursday, and then be at the Latta Vikings versus the Maccabee Panthers on Friday.
That's my school, right?
Who?
My Latta fan.
That's right. Yeah.
I told you. Only because of baseball. I'm a baseball guy, and I was following you guys last year when they were in the baseball playoffs and they run. So just by default, the team they beat
the team they beat in the lower state is also a team we cover, the Lakeview Wild Gators. I know you like some of the team names we have in our area, the Swamp Foxes, the Wild Gators. Y'all don't have stuff like that up in Virginia, do you?
No, we have some weird ones, but not like that. Or like the Phoebus Phantoms and stuff like that.
Yeah, you'll have to come to South Carolina during football season next year for high school. We'll take you to a game. It's not like obviously like Texas or anything.
I grew up in Florida, so I only went to Virginia for a year. So I had Florida high school football, which is like, if I had to say, it's probably like top of the line. Like we'd probably have like close to 3,000 to 5,000 fans a week.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's the football talk. So thank y'all for sticking with us this far. We got a couple more topics we're going to get into. Like I said at the top of the show, I'm going to discuss some Formula One racing. This is something I've been
very
wanting
niche, very niche for people.
Yes, it is. And honestly, I don't even know how I got on the topic of liking the sport. I know it started.
There's a race the week of
Evans.
we watched.
It was at Evans' bachelor party.
Yeah.
And I remember because it was the opening day of college football. And I think it may have been Toby who wanted to watch
I think he was trying to get into it, and he was asking questions. I think Sean had said he was like, "Talk to Paul. He's
Yeah.
big Formula One guy." And then I just started, rambling on about it. But
Yeah, because it was
if you
like
can, if you can watch NASCAR, you will love Formula One because
yeah.
it is
Well,
NASCAR on steroids where the cars, change more consistently. The team aspect of it, I think,
yeah.
is bigger than what it is in NASCAR, and the fact that it's not in a circle or an
Yeah.
oval.
Well, and a great thing I like about it is it's only like it's 70
Hour and
laps,
a
but
half,
it's going to be like an hour and a half to 2 hours
hour and a half.
max. So it's not like the race in Darlington we had this past weekend, where depending on cautions, these races can last a long time. And the one thing I like about with F1, obviously, I think the Drive to Survive show they have on Netflix has kind of grown F1, at least in the States, at least.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm all for F1, and they're on like that 2 week hiatus where they're not racing this coming weekend. They'll be back next week in Baku. But had the Monza Grand Prix this past Sunday, and I mean, tell
I'm
me
not,
your thoughts, and I'll give you my thoughts on everything.
I'm not a Leclerc guy, but
I
it
thought you
was.
liked Leclerc.
I'm a Sainz guy first, which
Okay, smooth
I think
operator.
you know me, baby. Um, I think they're making the wrong choice on getting rid of Sainz, but it was very cool to see the Italian car win in Italy. Like
Yeah,
that's awesome. I think the big thing to talk about from F1 last week is what is McLaren doing? Like
yeah,
they possibly have a champion that could dethrone a guy who has
hmm
totally dominated F1 the
hmm
last 3 years,
yeah,
and they are pushing their second driver to push him to the brink by
hmm
stealing points, winning races. I understand the whole, start where they flip-flopped him at the end of the race, but they
yeah,
had a race where they could have gave Lando the points. They made him give up the
hmm
pole position for the win to give
yep,
Piastri the win. I get
hmm
it. It's a team aspect,
yeah,
but that gap is closed drastically. I think a lot of people didn't think it would be this close. I don't think
yeah,
people saw McLaren getting their car to the point to where it would be this dominant on the second half after the
hmm
extended break,
yeah,
and the gap is tightened greatly, and throwing points like that away and then having Piastri push him off the line on the start, and obviously we
Was
know
it
that.
turn 4?
Yeah, we know Lando's not a great starter, he's never been.
No.
He wins pole and he just can't get off the line fast.
Yeah.
When those lights switch to red, I don't know
It
what's
just
in his
yeah.
brain, but it just doesn't say go for him.
Because I mean, even in was it Vandervoot in the Netherlands? I mean, Max was what started P2,
Mhm.
and I mean, before the first lap was even over, he already overtook Lando. My biggest thing is the downfall of like the Red Bull car. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I know Checo has had over $4 million in damages to his car, and some of it's not his fault, but that's something the teams have to pay for in their budget. But like, even with the performance issues where people were giving Checo such a hard time at the beginning of the season, Max is having those same issues now. And I mean, you've got Adrian Newey who's leaving. I mean, he's the designer of the car. I mean, it all signs a report, and he's going to sign with Aston Martin in the James Bond villain in Stroll.
Dude, that's your
But
favorite driver.
yeah, right. Our baby boy Logan Sargent got done dirty. And we can get to him in a second as well. But I'm with you, and I was watching the kind of like the post race with the F1 post race with Will Buxton, and I mean he made a lot of good points, and it's something that nobody's talking about. And I think Nico was at Rosberg
Mhm.
that I mean he was basically calling out Zach Brown after the race, where it's like I just think there's something in Oscar's contract where he's not the number 2 driver, because Zach always says they have 2 number 1 drivers, and they
Which they
do.
do, they
And
do. They're both
I think Oscar is
elite
the better
drivers.
driver than Lando. But at this point in time in the season and where we're at in the standings, Lando's the best one, or the one that's going to be able to challenge Max.
He's the only driver out of the 20 where he could dethrone Max
Yeah,
right now, so
but I don't think it's going to happen now
no. Which
because they have those papaya rules. But it's like Are you more concerned with winning the constructors, which I think McLaren is going to win the constructors championship this year, unless something drastically changes in 2 weeks for the Red Bull. But yeah, I mean, they're just giving Max, and I think Max is sitting back and enjoying it because he knows they have a terrible car, they have a crap car, and McLaren is just self-sabotaging themselves.
I think it's a double-edged sword though, where like they're kind of sabotaging themselves, but I think a big reason why Lando is winning these races is because like if you look at that top 5 every week, what would you say? It's Max is there. He's finished second a few times. He's finished third, fourth, fifth.
Yeah, he
You've
didn't even
had
he didn't even podium this week. He
no,
finished
not
sixth.
not yeah, not this week, but most of the weeks he has. You know, you'll see both Ferraris or one of the Ferraris in there. The Mercedes have been in there. Russell's won a race. Lewis Hamilton's won a race. One of them are usually in it. But every weekend, there's 2 cars from one team up there.
It's the papayas.
Piastri, as much as like they're having that adversity of like what's going on between the team, the inner turmoil, having him there though is also a huge help to Lando because they can race with him. Max's one downfall is Perez is nowhere to be found. He can't help him in any situation. He can't slow the race down for drivers behind him. He can't help, tail him. There's a lot of things there. If Max had Perez in that situation, it would help him out a little bit more. Whereas Max was pretty much 2 McLarens.
But especially like if you're looking at it, I know like the first segment of the race, however you want to label it, like you let them race, but like just this past weekend, for example, like Will Buxton was saying, it's not like Oscar was going to win the race, and it's not like they were going to not finish he wasn't going to finish on the podium. You're talking somebody finishing second and somebody finishing third, and in this world championship driver championship race between Lando and Max, Lando needs all the points he can get.
They need to push Lando all the way. No matter what.
But the thing is I don't think they can technically, like, I don't, legally, but like, they're just self-sat. And Will Buxton said, he's like, this doesn't happen often. And he's like, we legit have a title race, the first one since 2021. 2020.
Yeah, the Max and Lewis year.
Yeah. And was it 2020? Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think it's going to be that close because I don't think it's going to be something where Lando's going to win every race.
Yeah.
But he could, very well could. But at the end of the day, if you're not a great driver, there's only so much having a fast car can do for you. And I think that's where people kind of get it twisted with people that are just obsessed with Lando. It takes away the fact just how good of a driver like Lewis is or Max. Like the way Max has been able to utilize and get the most out of that Red Bull car with how crap it is it should tell you wonders like how actually good of a driver he is.
Yeah. And just to state, like, for anyone that does watch F1, oh, is Max washed up? Max is not washed up. That McLaren car is flying. Red Bull's car is still decent. But the one thing I always say is, like, look at the margins of victory. When Lando and Hamilton and Leclerc and Russell are winning races, what will we say? Maybe 4 to 8 seconds is
outside of
when Max was winning races,
outside last weekend
by 20 plus seconds. Like he was just demolishing guys. So the car was fast. That guy can drive.
Yeah, he can, and he's ruthless. But what was the race before Monza? What was last week? Because Lando won by like 20 seconds.
Yeah. Well, he had an issue with his car, didn't he? That was like the first race back, and he even said like qualifying was rough. Like Max was not happy at all.
Yeah, he's not happy. Red Bull is just in turmoil. It was the Dutch Grand Prix. So
yeah, his home race.
Yeah, and he finished second? Yeah, but Lando smoked that race because Leclerc finished third. I think Leclerc had a podium. But yeah, that seeing all the Ferrari red in Monza, that was pretty neat.
It's cool to see like them winning, and like they haven't had a great season. They had what do they have? I think they have one Sainz win and then one Leclerc win, maybe.
Yeah, and Sainz won because honestly,
he won like the second or third race of the year too, right? Like it was like
he won Australia.
Yeah.
because that's Max had like he didn't even finish because it's like right back tire caught on fire.
Yeah, his engine combusted
So
pretty much.
yeah, I think McLaren is just killed. Like they're just sabotaging themselves. Where it's like I think they just kind of back themselves into a corner with the whole Oscar situation, where I don't think they can come out and say Lando is our guy. But at the same time, like if you're in a situation like I get you don't want to take a win away from Oscar if he's leading the race. Like the way they like emotionally manipulated Lando for Oscar's win was insane.
Yeah.
But
But that's
McLaren just
also
also doesn't have good strategy.
I was
Like
gonna say that Oscar Piastri win was he was probably was the best driver on the track that day and had the
he
best
what
race.
he's the best.
McLaren sabotaged him by their pit strategy.
Yeah, he's honestly I think he long term he's a better driver than Lando. And I think a lot of people agree with that. But just this season right now, Lando's the only driver out on that grid that can statistically battle Max for the title for the World Driver Championship. And I fear because there's only 9 races left.
I don't
There's two.
Lando's not gonna catch him. I think McLaren wins the constructors, Max
Yeah.
wins the championship. But something that I have like gathered from this year is I used to love Lando Norris just from this whole season
Hmm.
altogether.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of made me turn against him, like the way he's
Yeah.
kind of handled situations as well.
Well, like he even kind of, this is going to paraphrase the quote he said, but I mean, he kind of took like some snide remark towards Lewis, or like when Lewis was dominating in Mercedes, when Mercedes was just light years ahead of everybody else on that grid for several years. But again, it
Oh, it was
just
in
goes,
that post race. Yeah, I remember that where they were in the
yeah,
director's chairs and he made
and
a comment.
but it just goes to show, like I said, where there's more to just having the fastest car.
Mhm.
And you're seeing that because Lando always screws up. He starts on the pole all the time, but he's never leading at the end of the first lap. So there's more to it than just having the fastest car.
Oh yeah, that's what I say about Max. Like Max's last year, they obviously had the best car, but what did he win?
Yeah,
He won every race but two, maybe one,
yeah, no 3, right?
three. But it was like a
But there's only 2
small
winners.
amount.
It was Checo and Sainz that won. So he won
Yeah,
21 out of 24 races, but there was only 2 other winners because
yeah.
I think Checo won, or no, Sainz won in like Japan or China, and then Checo won a couple races as
But
well.
like, look at McLaren now. They definitely have the fastest car, but
Mhm.
you're still seeing Red Bull here win a race. You see Mercedes win a race here. You see Ferrari win a
Ferrari.
race here. It's that's driving at the end of the day. If your car is
Yeah.
that dominant, you give Max that McLaren car now, he
Yeah.
wins all these races.
Or any like you give Leclerc that car, Sainz that car. I think after the Mexican Grand Prix, I think Red Bull's going to drop Checo.
He should have been gone before the start
Well,
of this
there's
season.
rumors that after the winter, when they had their like summer break where it was all set, and this is always just rumors and reports where it was set that Daniel Ricciardo was going to take his spot and Liam
Lawson should be
Lawson
Red
was going
Bull's
to take the
driver.
RB car.
It should be flipped.
You
Keep
think
Daniel at
RB
Alpha RB AlphaTauri, whatever you want to call
Cash
it.
App,
Yeah,
Cash App Red Bull? No, I'm
whatever.
just looking at it from the standpoint of like, okay, Daniel's a more seasoned driver. He's probably not better than Liam, or Yuki. But like that RB car is always just like it's the B team for Red Bull.
Yeah,
And I think the younger guys should stay in RB and just give Daniel the Red Bull seat for the rest of the year. And
yeah,
then you can decide what you want to do at the year's end because Max is number one, and
he is. But
they're not going to bring in anybody to challenge him.
Max has made comments that he may not be racing another 6,
10
7
years,
years.
10 years.
Yeah.
He's
They asked him
also,
about his 200th race, and they were like another 200, and he was like, probably not.
yeah.
And what is there? There's 28 races in a season.
I don't think there's that many, is there? I know it keeps going
24
up.
to 28. Yeah,
Yeah.
they add one every year, so it's somewhere between 24 and 28 races.
But also, I think that just goes to show you who Max is, where I don't think this is his true passion. Because he did like some documentary that released during the summer break for them where I think he wants to get into like owning his own team, or I know he loves the sim racing. So doing that, I think that's his true passion. And I don't think he cares about how many championships he wins.
No, I mean, he's 3 in a row. He's won
Going
one
to
of
be
the most
4 in a row, I think.
4 in a row. Had one of the most dominant seasons for a champion last year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to be able to replicate that. That's hard to replicate, even for him.
Just like to win that many races and just like the weird freak things that happen with cars, like we said, like tires or a front wing coming off, like that stuff happens in NASCAR, happens in F1, and
Yeah.
it was clean the whole season for them.
Yeah.
Like,
but it's just crazy how their car is like just they have a new car for this year, and Adrian Newey's supposed to be like this guru genius, but I don't know what's happened after those first 2 races, or maybe after the first like 6 or 7 races, because he didn't win in Australia, but he won like 2 or 3 after that. Then the Miami situation where I think the pay or the yellow car, whatever it is in F1 helped Lando in that race, and then he won 2 more directly after that. So, but just something has happened with that Red Bull car, and I don't think they can figure it out. I'm sure Checo's wrecks and how much it's costing them is not helping, because they can't bring in any upgrades, at least performance wise.
Yeah, it'll be a fun end of the season. I'll say that.
Yeah,
the
I'm anxious to see how Baku's going to go.
Yeah, unfortunate thing with F1 is the last few years, it's kind of been a blowout. So the fact that it's this close just makes it a little bit more interesting race to race, and the fact that Max isn't winning every race makes it a lot more fun.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the Premier League very briefly.
This is rough for you. We'll be quick because this is brutal.
Yeah. So not the start Manchester United's wanted. Steven also follows the Premier League. He's a West Ham guy. Paul is unfortunately a Chelsea fan. Yeah. Again, it's match week 3, but it's the same old with Man United.
What is that?
I just don't.
What's that quote? You can't prepare the same way or go into something with the same idea and expecting a different outcome. There's like a quote along those lines. I feel like that's United's season in a nutshell relative. Like, you had a coach that you all wanted to fire. You bought players that, let's be honest, like Ugarte and Mazraoui and them they're good players. They make you guys better than what you had, but are they like game changers? No. And that's what this coach needs. His style is ugly. You guys knew it all last year that it was rough. You hyped it up with the signings thinking it'd be different, but you knew the guy you had, it was going to be the exact same.
Yeah. It doesn't help that Rasmus Højlund got hurt in the preseason tour, or, with Rashford on the left side. I just don't think that's working out anymore. Like, I know he's a homegrown academy guy, but it just seems like he's lost some type of confidence. I don't know what it is. But I think putting Garnett, I don't know. They have to make a lot of changes over this international break, and I don't know if he's going to do it or not.
That's the problem. He doesn't, and he has guys that he wants to play. Like, you guys paid $65 million for a glorified track star. You paid $65 million for Evan to run around at Old Trafford and try and steal balls away, because that's all Mason Mount is he's an energizing bunny that just is running around.
But that's okay. Like, I think the thing with him is, though, it's just his price tag, where it's like, if he was like a $30 million, if he was like a $30 million signing, it wouldn't be that big a deal, because like, especially as long as these seasons are, like, you need guys who are like quote unquote rotational players that can come in and give you a good 60 to 70 minutes or whatnot, or come on in the final 30, 40 minutes. And I think that's exactly what Mason Mount is, but he can't stay healthy. You
can't rely on Casemiro.
We lost 3-0 to Liverpool this weekend. The first 2 goals were direct mistakes by Casemiro. I mean, they were.
Yeah,
And
he's old. You can't have him as your last
he's
line
not
of
even that
defense.
old. He's 32.
I
I
would
know
say in
that's
the
old in
aspect
the
of
scheme of,
football,
like,
it's old
that
in the fact
in
of the
Premier
level
League.
that the levels that he's played at to be here
Yeah.
now. Like he
Yeah.
was on some elite teams and played
Yeah.
a
Real
lot of
Madrid.
football. So like in the aspect of his career, he's an old player because he's
Yeah, but
played a lot of football.
I think Ugarte is gonna come in and do wonders. You pair him in the midfield with Bruno and Kobe Mainu. I mean, that's solid. That's a solid midfield right there. It's maybe not world class, but Kobe Mainu is still very young.
Yeah,
And then you get Rasmus Højlund healthy. You have him in the center at the striker position. Put Rashford on the bench, and then you can put Garnacho on the left side. And honestly, Ahmad's not bad on the right side.
yeah. It's just it's a lot of
But
what
it's
ifs,
all
I think.
tactics. Like
Yeah.
we were talking about this last week, where people love to try to replicate what Pep does and try to play out the back, and nobody can do it like Manchester City does. And we can't. Man United can't do it. They just can't do it. Like we don't have a capable left back because Luke Shaw's always getting hurt. So you've got Diego Dallo playing on the left side when he's a natural right back, and our other left back Malacia. I mean, he's been hurt for almost 2 years now. And I don't know if he's ever going to be fully healthy, which it sucks because I think he's a solid talent. He's not a world classer, but he can,
Hmm.
I mean, he's still very good for what he can do and the ability he brings. And so I don't know. I feel like Man United is kind of like Chelsea, where they have flashes of brilliance, but then it's just not consistent. They just revert right back to
Hey, don't
nonsense.
do not classify us in your bracket because
Oh,
we are
get out
not
of
there
here with
this
that
year.
crap.
We
Chelsea's
are
the exact. Y'all just have Todd Bowley spend millions
no.
of millions and billions of pounds and give these
You
10-year contracts to players. And then you fire the manager in 3 days. And then you bring in a new one and he doesn't rate those guys the same way. I mean, you spend 100 million on Mudrick, who's,
he's terrible, terrible, terrible.
and he doesn't even play. He's like Anthony. Like Man United spent 90 million pounds on Anthony and he's hot garbage.
Yeah, listen. Have you watched any Chelsea games this year besides City? Because
Um,
City may do that to everyone. I think people think that Arsenal City are going to be close. No, I think City wins it by like 9 to 11 points this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely cities. No, and I'll be honest with you, no,
Okay,
I can't.
so
I don't watch the Premier League as heavy as I watch like college football. But if it's like a bit like if Chelsea plays like one of the top 6 teams, I'll watch it. But if they're playing like they played Crystal Palace last weekend, I'm probably not going to watch it.
which
Or if they play
which
like Ipswich Town, I'm not going to watch that.
that game was we should have won that game. I know, shoulda, woulda, coulda, but we dominated the game. I think we had like 9 shots on goal. They had 2. The goal that they did
Hmm.
score was a cross they threw in the box that we headed away. Then their
Mhm.
guy shot it. Levi Colwell blocks it, and it goes right to Eze's feet, and he hits a curler into the top
Mhm.
bin, which
He's
nobody
solid
was
for
gonna.
Crystal Palace.
Yeah, he is. They had good wingers. Him and Elise were
But
phenomenal.
Chelsea
But
spends all that money and can't get a competent striker.
yeah, that's
Is
probably our
Nicholas
downfall.
Jackson?
He scored. He did score,
Yeah. But he's your
but
striker right now, isn't he? I mean,
yeah.
Chelsea has like 80. They've got like a college football roster on their
Okay, dude,
on y'all's
before you
current squad.
keep don't keep saying that because our coach has come out and said that he's working with 24 players. We do have 44 players officially, but 20 of them practice at a separate time than the first team.
Yeah, they play. They're on the reserve side. Like
Yeah. We bring them in
Sterling.
for
Who
the
else is over on that side?
uh Ben
Ben Chilwell.
Chilwell. I mean Raheem Sterling was there. Um
Y'all have
Leslie
got like 12
Ugochukwu.
goalies. I mean,
Yeah. But we have
is
a set
Kepa
team.
still technically a Chelsea player?
Technically, yeah, he's on loan.
Okay. I mean, y'all had Kepa, then you got Eduardo Mendy, and I guess Eduardo didn't work out. Then
Mendy's gone, yeah, he's in Saudi Arabia, he was bought
you
out.
got Sanchez, which I think Sanchez, who y'all got him from what, Brighton?
Brighton.
I think he's a solid keeper.
He is, and he actually the game we won 6-2 against Wolves, he had a crazy assist for Cole
Yeah.
Palmer's goal.
We had a nice stop a couple weeks ago, didn't he?
Yeah, so the one thing I'll say about Chelsea is I do love this coach so far. There's like you can see defensively we have to work out some kinks, but I think the defense is just so used to the style that Pochettino played with,
Mhm.
where Maresca, was the assistant coach for Pep, kind of, plays that similar style. But
Yeah,
just the way we like drive the ball up the field from last year, like we get the ball up the pitch in like 6 passes and it's boom, 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 crossing in the box, or um, Cole Palmer's playing the 10, so he gets in, he kicks it out to Madueke or Pedro Neto, and it's into the box to Jackson, or it's a shot from one of them. So it's just a
yeah.
lot more fast paced. I can see the idea of how they want to play. I
Mhm.
think once we kind of get that down, we could be scary because, like I said, you said we have a ton of players. We start with Madueke and Pedro Neto on our wings, and we can sub in on Jao Felix. I hate to say it, I won't bring in Mudrik. I do think Jaden Sancho may be decent for us.
No, we won't.
He was good at BVB.
But there's a huge difference between the Bundesliga and
Yeah,
the Premier
maybe
League.
he just didn't like playing for that bald fraud.
No, he's just a selfish player, and he didn't want to put in the work. I mean, he had like a sabbatical where he could find himself, and it didn't work out. I mean, if you
But
don't show up and you show up late, like all the reports say he did, and just didn't want to put into work, I don't know what to tell you.
so he wouldn't even probably come on second. Bring on Nkuku.
Yeah, I don't know
Like
what,
the attacking power we have to sub on people is kind of absurd.
but you can't score on a consistent basis, at least,
Uh
or finishing. Like you get the shots on
this
goal, but
to be seen for this year, I would say, to be
yeah,
determined because Man City, everyone's gonna struggle against
yeah.
them. You guys may not. That's like your one game where you guys actually play like halfway decent and find
Man,
ways to
like
win.
historically, we just never play good against Liverpool, but we always play up against the top 6 teams. But it's like when we play these bottom tier teams, yeah,
It's the teams
like
that
I said,
sit
like
back. You don't have the play style to break a team down. You're
no,
good on the counter. You can counter
yeah.
attack.
Honestly, I wish we'd have never got rid of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
I'm
I
not
think he was
actually
I think he was a great manager.
I like the coach now, but for the last 2 years, if you would have gave me Tuchel, I would take him back in a heartbeat.
Yeah, like I think Ten Hag's going to struggle because we got the new ownership, minority ownership at least. And I think their patience is kind of wearing thin with him. I
I
think
was gonna say, I
they
just
gave him
didn't get the trophy had to save him because he was out the door. Like it was an agreement that he was gone, right? Like they had
well,
mutually agreed that
I don't
he was
think that
done.
was ever true. I'm sure that was always a possibility anytime you get new ownership, especially in the Premier League, because I mean, Bully did not hire Tuchel, right?
No,
No,
that
he
was
was there before
Abramovich.
Bully
Yeah,
got
yeah.
there.
When we won that Champions League, Abramovich was manager. Then the next
Yeah.
following year is when we had our assets
So
frozen and all that.
yeah, but there's always rumors and reports that Tuchel and Bully just didn't get along well, so he was out the door.
Bowley wanted to
And
be like in the locker room
yeah,
and like kind of have a say. And Tuchel's like, "Listen, I've won this team 4
yeah,
trophies. Like,
yeah. Let me do my job.
I
It's like
got this.
Moneyball,
Yeah,
and yeah. So I mean, I think Ten Hag's leash is getting shorter. I'm sure winning the FA Cup last year helped him, but I think the new like Ineos kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt, and they've got a legit backroom staff now that knows what they're doing and getting the right players in that Ten Hag wants, and not just signing players for marketability purposes like a Jadon Sancho. Like when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was there, Man United signed Donny van de Beek from Ajax, and Ole didn't even want him. Like he said, Shep, I don't want him. I don't value
yeah.
him. But they viewed it from a different standpoint. And I mean, Donny van der Beek's career suffered from it
Hmm.
because he was like a finalist for the Ballon d'Or
He was a good
that big
player.
run Ajax had in the
Yeah, he was a
Champions
good
League
player.
when they lost to Tottenham in devastating fashion, that Champions League
I don't
semifinal.
know. I don't know how much you follow of other leagues. That Ajax team that he was on
Is
had some
insane.
studs on it, dude. They sold a bunch of players for
I
that team
mean,
for some
they had
serious money.
Ziyech that went to Chelsea,
Yep.
Matthias de Ligt, um, Frankie de Jong,
They
Van
were
de Beek. I
they
mean,
were
they had
stacked. They were
studs.
stacked.
Yeah. And Ten Hag was the manager.
Yeah, that, like you say though, the style he plays is a lot more like counterattack and
Mhm.
just like up and down the pitch that doesn't work in the Prem.
Yeah. Well, I
It's
see. I
too
always thought he was like because he worked under Pep at Bayern Munich. Like he tries to play the style. Everybody tries to play the style Pep does, and it doesn't work unless you're Pep Guardiola. Like people can try to replicate what
I say
Nick
it all the
Saban
time.
does in college football, but there's only one Nick Saban.
20 teams in the Premier League, 2 teams can play that way. City and Arsenal right now.
Yeah.
Even Liverpool's success, they don't play that style. They're not
No.
playing out from the back.
What? Yeah. Klopp's
It
style was just attack, 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 attack,
it may
attack.
be you may get the occasional like crazy through ball from Trent or Van Dijk deep, but
Yeah.
it's just send your wingers up the pitch and just throw the ball deep and see what they can do. Get it
Yeah.
into Salah, speed
Or
or
Luis Diaz, because I
yeah.
feel like we all every season they have this conversation about Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's either like world class one year or he's just terrible the next week or next year because he can't defend, but he's just a master class with the ball in his feet.
Mhm.
And he's an awful defender, which is why he doesn't really play a lot in the England squad, but he's just too good for on the club level he's got to play. And he's dang good at what he does, except defending, and he's a right back.
It's funny that they always put him in the debate for like best right backs in the world or the Premier League. It's a shame, and I'm not saying this because he's a Chelsea player.
Oh, here we go.
You can't even say it. Reece James, if
He's never
healthy,
healthy.
is the best right back though. Just from both ends of the spectrum, can shoot, score, pass, and he's probably the best defensive player
I would
in that
take Kyle
position.
Walker just for the
Who's
fact
fading?
that.
Who's fading? He's
But
fading.
the
But
thing
yeah,
is, Reece James can't stay healthy.
no, 100%.
That's my only thing. He just can't stay healthy. Honestly, the best offender, and this might be because he was a Man United guy, but he just can't do anything pushing forward. And he's on West Ham now. It's Aaron Wan-Bissaka. One-on-one, no, it's very rare when somebody's going to get past him. Like if you're just talking straight defending and not having to do anything else, Wan-Bissaka is the best defensive right back in the Premier League.
Yeah.
But when you factor in everything else a right back is supposed to do in the modern game, he can't do it that well.
They have to be offensive now, with the style of play.
And he just can't. I think he's gotten better.
Which will work for West Ham though, because West Ham has Kudus who can take the ball from box to box. So it kind of enables him just to be able to
I like West Ham's a solid team. It's
they had a lot of good pickups this year.
They just need a striker to replace Antonio, and they may have it. I don't know, but Jared Bowen's great off the right side.
They had a coaching change too. Is it Lopetegui?
Sounds about right. I trust you.
I think it's Lopetegui, but yeah, they'll be good. But just to, I guess, kind of wrap up the Premier League.
Yeah.
I will say, you give me your opinion after this. I have you guys United finishing somewhere between 7th and 10th. It's week 2, but just
3
from what I've seen. Week 3, from what I've seen, it's not pretty. And I don't think Ten Hag makes it through the whole season.
Yeah. I would have us finishing anywhere. I don't think we're going to, based off what we've seen, I don't think we'll make top 4.
I'll say 6th through 10th. I'll give you 6th through 10th because I would say
5th through 8th. I think once they get everybody back healthy and they have a full squad, and we don't keep trotting Rashford out there. But again, it's if it's something where he doesn't make the changes, then he is gone. But I think we finish 5th or 8th, but between 5th and 8th.
I know you got a Marcus Rashford kit.
I do. Yep.
Oh, I know you do. You got all the bad United players.
I got a Mason Mount one, Rashford, and I think I don't know if I have a Bruno jersey or not.
I can't say Bruno's bad. I love some Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah, you would love to have Bruno on your team.
I don't know.
Yeah, you
maybe.
He doesn't get hurt. Like knock on wood.
But he would play the same position that Cole Palmer plays for us.
Really?
Like a 10 attacking mid, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you gave Bruno so much crap about PKs. That was Cole Palmer's specialty last year too.
Bro.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's not good, but the crap you gave
He had
Bruno
22
about
goals,
PKs.
10 penalties, but he also had like 18 assists. You
Yeah,
can't
he's
fake
good.
18 assists. I mean,
And the contract Chelsea gave him is just astronomical. I don't
yeah,
like Todd Bowley signing these guys like MLB contracts for like
dude, no
22
one
years.
after getting rid of Sterling and all them, there's not a player on our team that makes over $250,000 a week either. It's kind of absurd.
Because their contract is spanned out over 9 years.
Yeah, but just back to the Cole Palmer. I think you could say the penalties and all that about Cole Palmer, but the true shining moment is the Euros this summer. When he came on the pitch for England, you saw the difference. They struggled offensively, and in that
Mhm,
championship game as well. Guy comes on, almost leads to a goal from Ollie
mhm.
Watkins, then scores the goal to tie the game.
Yeah.
And even the game before that, who did they play? Cole Palmer threw that ball to Ollie Watkins, that through ball where Ollie Watkins turns on a
Mhm,
swivel and shoots it and scores that goal for them
yeah.
to win. And it was a
Mhm,
pass from Cole Palmer, and he did it numerous times this summer
yeah.
for the Euros.
I think Man City's ultimately, which Man City can just go get whoever they want to. But the fact that they let him go, I think, is very surprising.
Hey, do you know who Cole Palmer's favorite Premier League team is?
Yeah, he's a Man United guy. He grew up loving Man United.
You guys would love to have him.
Yeah, who wouldn't? But I don't know. Like,
City,
yeah, well, they don't need him. I
they
mean,
just produce them left and right because I don't know if you watch any City games. That Savinha kid, holy smokes,
he's somebody they bought, right? Like, he's not an
yeah,
academy kid.
nah, but he's like a young kid though. He's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. We'll see. Like, there's still a long way to go in this Premier League season.
Yeah, I
So
can guarantee one thing:
what?
Chelsea will finish higher than United.
It sounds like a bet.
I mean, I'm already kind of smoking you in the
Yeah,
Premier
what?
League picks.
2 points. 2 points. 2 points. Come on, like it's oh yeah, no, you're not smoking me. You got me by 2 points. It
You can
sounds
make a
like
bet on that. Yeah,
sounds
we
like
can
a
make a
bet.
bet on that.
We'll talk about it off air.
Yeah,
All right. Well, I
gamble
think that's
responsibly.
yeah, yeah. Well, we can't gamble legally here in South Carolina. So if anybody's watching this that lives outside the state of South Carolina, please gamble responsibly. If you do that, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't have a single clue. So don't take anything I say seriously or literally. Paul, thank you for joining us tonight. Hopefully you can um, do this we may move this to Wednesday instead of Thursday because I might be going to some JV football games, so I don't want to have to cancel. That way we can talk about the football games and get people, what they want and kind of talk about some other stuff. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we get out of here?
Nah, man, I appreciate you letting me come on and speak today
Yeah.
about
No Met
football
stuff
being
next
back.
week. No
No,
Met
no,
stuff
no.
next week.
Listen, love the Mets, but we're probably not making the playoffs. The Braves will probably still make it, which stinks because the Braves are like hurt everywhere, and they're still going to make the
Yeah.
playoffs before the Mets.
It's just that AA magic where it's like the year we won the World Series where, Ronald Acuna goes down and, we have to like reinvent the whole outfield and you get Eddie Rosario, Jorge Soler, Jock Peterson, and Adam Duvall. And where the Braves offense now is just too wishy-washy. Like they're either really good or they're just bad right now. And I think once we get Austin, if Austin's back this season, which I don't think he will be, he won't be healthy at least. But if we can get Ozzy back and move, but Whit Merrifield was having an awful season with the pot or the Phillies. He's turned it around a little bit since he's been with the Braves. What, Gio Urshela at third?
Former Yankee and Twins player, I think.
Yeah, he's batting I think 300 since he's been with the Braves, and so the big thing with the Braves is just their pitching staff, where you know what you're getting from Chris Sale, you don't know what you're going to get from Charlie Morton, you really don't know what you're going to get from Max Fried, but Chris Sale and Reynaldo Lopez, if Fried and Morton can be consistent, having 4 starting pitchers going into the playoff is insane.
Yeah, I mean, I always say 2 aces kind of get the job done for you. The fact that they can pitch 4 times in a series.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Phillies with Nola and Wheeler.
They carry them the last 2
Yeah.
years. They've carried them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like that's one thing AA really hasn't addressed seriously. Like just something happened with Chris Sale where he's having
A
there.
career.
He
He's
should
going to be
win
the Cy Young. He's going to win the
he
Cy
should
Young
win the
this
Cy
year.
Young this year,
Yeah.
and just kind of found lightning in a bottle. Same thing with Charlie Morton when we won the World Series in 2021. I mean, he was kind of having an up and down career recently, then just kind of had a resurgence, and then he's been all over the place the past several years. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully we'll at least make the playoffs, but the way it's shaking up right now, if we do make the playoffs, we're going to be playing the Phillies in the divisional round. Or the wild card, excuse me.
I just got a notification on my phone. Mets just won 8-3, so hopefully the Braves lose tonight, so the Mets can take the wild card spot.
The Braves were winning last I saw. Let me check. Yeah, we beat the Rockies 5-2.
All right, so still a half game back, but I'm going to say one thing. Don't debate it because we could go on for another hour here if I say it. I'm going to say it. It's probably biased. Francisco Lindor should be MVP over Shohei Ohtani because the fact that he plays the most important position on the field and he plays defense, it's 100% easier to go up and hit 4 times a game instead of having to go out there, think about the defensive side, and go hit at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. I'm in agreement. And I agree with you just because of the crap they gave Ronald Acuna last year, where like all the analytical people were saying Mookie Betts should be the MVP because he's so good he can play second base. Like I'm pretty positive if you put Ronald Acuna at second base, he could play second base.
Yeah, no, he's a freak.
But
he also stole like 55 bases.
He stole 70. He was the first 40-70 player, and you would have thought like he was the worst person on earth. But Shohei Ohtani's at a 40-40 right now, and he's, you would have thought that's never been done before. But
they post them 9 times on Instagram about it.
It's LA, and the big people in baseball media that cover baseball the most love Shohei. Jeff Passan, Ben Verlander. I mean, Ben Verlander might have he loves Shohei. And so that's just kind of as it's LA when it's Atlanta. So Atlanta's like a small market. But yeah, I agree with you with Lindor. I think a lot of people agree with that, but it's just
he's not going to win it. He won't win
most of these MVP awards, and you go from the Heisman Trophy to the NBA MVP to the NFL MVP, it goes normally to the best players on the best teams. That's just how it is. And like I said, I think the year that Devontae Smith won the Heisman at Alabama, he had to have a magical season to have that happen.
Yeah.
So we could go on and on, but again, thank you. Yeah, because we're at 2 hours.
It felt like 10 minutes.
Yeah. So no, this was a ton of fun. This is kind of what you'll expect on these episodes in the future. Maybe not 2 hours long, but as like the college football season progresses and we get more bigger matchups, we'll talk more college football compared to and we'll mix in some other sports, especially next month. Playoff baseball is going to be starting, so we'll touch on some playoff baseball. NFL football starting soon.
We lose F1 here soon as well. We don't have that many races left. And
I mean, we got like 4 months left.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's just their races are so spread out. Where sometimes it's like 2 weeks where, they race this weekend next weekend. Then they have Singapore on September 22nd. They don't race again until Austin on October 20th. And then, so it's, after the next 2, after this week or next weekend and the following weekend, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 6 races after that. So in terms of races, yes, there's not many races left, but time-wise, it goes through almost December.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last race is
some hockey. They can bring it up.
You and Steven can do your own cast with hockey. I don't care about hockey. We're in the South. It doesn't snow here that often.
It's crazy. The last 3 of the 4 last Stanley Cup champions are from the South.
Who won it this past year? The Panthers.
Yep.
Let's see if I can name the Panthers won it last year. Was it another Florida team that won it the previous year? And they're from the South?
Nah, Big Bachelor Party.
The Knights won it recently, didn't they?
That was before the Panthers.
Okay, who won it the year before them?
Think about snowboarding and skiing.
The Avalanche.
Yep.
Well, you know who has won it more recently than the other, right? The Hurricanes over the Rangers.
Yeah.
That's all I got with hockey. So
Yeah, good. That's a good pull. Great pull. That
yeah,
is factual, but
yeah.
I'm gonna end it on this note. Rangers knocked them out of the playoffs last year.
Did they? I couldn't even tell. Yeah, you and Evan were smack talking. I was like, I didn't even know they were playing each other.
No,
I don't.
you smack talk us about it not knowing anything.
I'll look at a sports app and I was like, oh, hockey playoffs are going on. I was like, oh, Paul likes the Rangers. Oh, the
Yeah,
Hurricanes are playing.
you just love to stir the pot.
Yep. All right, man. We're gonna get out of here. I'll be back live Friday night, covering the Latta game. We'll have our new episode for high school next Tuesday, 7 p.m. So keep an eye out on it.
Go Latta.
Me and Steve, be careful, and you got to be careful saying that sometimes. And then me and Steven will be back Sunday afternoon to recap the Carolina Clemson football games. And if Paul wants to hop on, we'll send him the link. So we'll see y'all Friday, and then we'll see you again on Sunday. Thank y'all.
Yes, sir.